Welcome to another East Tradewinds presentation with Vanessa Burns from Vanessa Burns Consulting.
So people don't think about messaging and grant funding, but the two of them really actually go very well together. And you're going to find out why. But first of all, why the heck am I sitting here in front of you today? And what makes me eligible to talk about this stuff? First of all, as I said, my name is Vanessa Burns. My pronouns are she, her. I own Vanessa Burns Grant Consulting. I'm based in Halifax, Nova Scotia on the beautiful east coast of Canada. A couple of things about myself: an adventure seeker. I'm a rock climber, ice climber, hiker. I went to Nepal in 2024 for 6 weeks. I trekked the Everest 3 passes, track rate at 9 out of 10 for difficulty. Yes, I finished. Made it to Everest Base Camp, and the highest altitude I went up to was about almost 20,000 feet, and I saw the sunrise over Everest, which was quite spectacular. Everybody likes dogs. I put a picture of my dog there. Arthur is a border collie. He's my therapist, my employee, my roommate, and gets me out and keeps me active, playing fetch all day, every day. The middle three things I'm very proud of. I'm one of 6 in Canada holding the GPC Grant Professional Certified accreditation. It's like the CPA of the grant world. I'm one of 6 of those. I'm also a certified supplier with the Canadian Queer Chamber of Commerce. And I've just been approved as a Grant Professionals Association approved trainer as of yesterday. So I'm really proud of those credentials I can bring to my clients. So I have a lot of conversations with people about their business. And we talked a lot today about clarity. And actually, you're right. If you're not clear, you're not focused. And if you're not focused, you can't apply for funding in a way that you should be applying for funding. So a lot of people think that their messaging is great, but when I actually ask them, what do you do? They can't explain it to me, or they're using this really big words and they're going on and on and on, and they're not very succinct, and it makes no sense. So if you're talking like that in a grant application, you're going to confuse funders. They're not going to understand really what you're asking for. They won't get what you do and what you need. And this in turn leads to what we call rejected applications. You have to be clear and concise. If your messaging and your brand is all over the place, you're not going to be concise in the eyes of a funder. And so this is probably why, if you're applying for grants or looking for funding and you're seeing, some rejections coming through, is you're not clear. And if you're not clear, then you won't be able to get that magic grant money that everybody says is out there. So we really want to move from what we call the scattered to the strategic. So your messaging works for you and your business, but also works for the funding that you want to apply for to help grow your business. When you think about your brand, have you ever taken a look at your brand? And I'm not a brand expert. This is not a thing on branding, but I mean, if you ever looked at your website or your communication materials, does it make sense to other people? And I've read a lot of things over the years, and I've sat in front of people and they've shown me their website. My eyes are kind of glazing over and going, what the heck are you selling? And I'm thinking, if my eyes are glazing over, there's no way that a funder is going to understand what you're doing. First of all, like, too much jargon. You're using industry speak. I'm not in your industry. Neither is someone who's giving you money most times. So really, what kind of words are you using? And you're really talking about what you do, and not so much the difference you make for your clients. We know you do this. Like, that I do grant work. That you're selling widgets. But what is it actually doing, and how is that impacting your client or your customer? But you're not really explaining that. So you can't really see what your actual outcomes are if you use your product or your service. And the other thing I find too is a lot of people try to be everything to everybody. We can't do that, right? That's just not logical. So if we're trying to market to everybody and we're trying to put all this messaging, we've got all these, different focuses, the messaging is getting a little bit muddled. So we really have to look at these things, because this actually feeds into how you're able to craft more clear sounding grant applications. So what I like to tell people is, take a look at your materials, but get someone from the outside who doesn't really know anything about your business to look at your materials and see if they can understand what you're trying to sell or provide. And if they can't understand what you're trying to do, then there's no way that someone who wants to give you money, like a grant funder, is going to be able to understand what you do and why you need the resources to grow your business. So the big thing to keep in mind really is, how do you kind of get to that yes? From a client perspective, I mean, we all have businesses. I've written it all down on a piece of paper, some really interesting businesses today. And you want to make sure that your clients understand what the solution is. You're providing a solution to a problem. Funders want to see this too. Funders want to understand what solution you're providing for a problem. However, They also want to see your impact, the difference you're making, why you need their resources. Why do you need their money? Are you looking to, hire someone? Are you looking to export your product or service into another province, into another country? Like, what do you need to do with the funding? Is it aligned with what they're looking to support? If this isn't clear in what you're saying, then again, you're not going to be able to secure that money. The biggest thing to keep in mind with grants in general is your messaging, your brand, the way you present yourself is a first impression. Most times when people are reading grant applications, I've been on the other side, you have maybe 30 seconds to make an impression. If you can't make that impression, if you can't show a funder why you're aligned to the money they're giving away, you're not going to get the money. And so it's really, really clear to make sure that you are actually understanding why you need the resources, but also making sure that your brand and your messaging is consistent and is able to make sense. You're able to secure that funding. That's really, really important. So that's how you kind of move from that no more into the yes, in the fact that you are clear, concise, and you are aligning yourself with what the funder is looking to fund. So once we kind of understand like the messaging piece and you're clear on why you need money, we kind of move into that whole demystifying grants. And we heard a little bit of discussion today about alternative funding. And, grants are out there. Grants are great for your business, but grants aren't right for everybody. And not every grant is a good grant, and not all money is good money. So you really have to understand, the landscape and why people think it's such an impossible way to get alternative funding. It's overwhelming. Right? I mean, grants, yes, they are what we call that free money, but they come with limitations. Most times they're tied to some kind of a project. Most times they're very competitive. I know someone here talked about putting an application in for the Amber grant. I love that. I love the fact that you're getting out there, you're putting applications in, it's competitive. But, if you do get a no, don't be discouraged because you can always apply again. The more you apply, the more people realize who you are and they recognize you. And eventually you're going to see a yes around the corner. So I'm really glad to see people are actually putting out applications, but it can be overwhelming. It takes time. The biggest thing to keep in mind that yes, it's free money in a sense, but it's also a partnership to help you grow. And the other thing too is that funders look at you in the eyes the same as, let's say, a bank, in the sense that you could be a risk. So if you are a new business and not generating a lot of revenue, you could be seen as a risk when it comes to securing grants. And sometimes you have to provide like financial statements. If you don't have any revenue generation, it's hard to provide those financial statements. So you will be viewed as a risk. The other thing to keep in mind too with grants is they don't all cover 100% of a cost. So if you're looking at a hiring grant, for example, you may only get 50% of the cost covered. That's why you need to have some kind of revenue generation happening to cover those extra expenses. The other thing too is some grants, you don't get the money all up front. You may not get it till the end of the projects. You have to sort of foot the bill, so to speak, with revenue. So that's kind of things I caution folks about is, yes, there's free money out there. Yes, there's grants out there, but there are parameters around them and you have to make sure that you align with them. Not to say that if you're a new business that there's not opportunity for you, but they may be different opportunities. But the biggest thing really, and this is the only thing you keep in mind from this presentation, is alignment. You need to make sure that what you need money for is aligning in terms of what the grant is going to fund. If you can't show that alignment, then the grant will not be successful. And so one word to take away from this is alignment. If you're not aligned, you will not get that funding. So how do we make things a little bit less mysterious around the grant space? And how do we kind of bring things together? As I said, just because you can apply doesn't mean you should apply. So people come to me all the time saying, oh my gosh, there's this great grant out there. I'm going to create something completely new and do it. Not great. You're out there, you're doing your business. Everyone has a mission and values. If you're doing what I call mission creep and you're creating things that don't really align with what your business values are, that grant's not right for you, right? You shouldn't be creating new things just to get money. You need to be focusing on what is right for your business and what is right for your own mission and your own values. So the biggest thing really is industry and demographic fit. Does the funding opportunity fit your specific sector? Are you in agriculture? Are you in tech? Are you in finance? What sector are you in? Is the grant applicable for that? Does it suit your business profile? The other word I want you to remember from this presentation is applicant guide. Excuse my language, read the effing applicant guide. This applicant guide is your basically step by step how to apply for the particular grant. If you don't read the applicant guide, you're going to put in things that maybe they don't cover in terms of expenses. You're not going to understand what they're actually going to fund. So again, 2 words so far: alignment and applicant guide. Read the guide. That'll give you everything you need to know about an opportunity. Some of them are about 65 plus pages. I read them for a living. Some of them are a few lines on a website, but that's really, really important to make sure you've got that alignment and again, that fit. Number 2 is project alignment. There's that word again, alignment. Does the grant help you grow? Grants in business are used to grow your business in some way, whether you're hiring, exporting, training, doing some new research, new development, whether you're trying to do something innovative. Grants are there to help you grow. Grants are not there to get you out of debt. Grants are not there, to replace sales. I mean, we're all in business. We all have to make sales. And people hate when I tell them, well, go make some sales. I hate sales. Well, go make some sales. It'll help your business, right? Grants are there to help you grow in a certain way. So you want to keep that in mind. If you're looking to hire someone, grants. If you're looking to, do some export activity, there could be a grant for that. Training your staff, there definitely are grants for that. You looking to collaborate with, let's say, a company over in the UK, for example, or Ireland, there is funding in those countries that can help you, that you can partner with and access both, UK and Irish funding and Canadian funding and do projects together, believe it or not. So there's really interesting ways you can use grants to grow your business. The other thing I talk about is number 3 is ROI. Is the grant worth your time? How much effort are you putting into an application? If all you're going to get at the end of the day is, let's say, $5,000, but this grant is taking you like 40 plus hours or 80 plus hours to put together, believe it or not, that I've seen grants like that. Is it worth your time? So you really want to make sure that when you're investing your own time into this work, that you're spending your time using it wisely and applying for opportunities that actually fit what you want to do, and not trying to fit that circle into the square just to get what we call this free money. We kind of go back here to a little bit of that clarity. So we really have, we've seen a grant. We want to apply. We align with it. We read the applicant guide. We kind of have to see now, like, how does it all come together? The biggest thing that I tell people is, can you tell me your impact of your business in 2 sentences? And I know today we had 60 seconds to introduce ourselves, right? I mean, when we're on a time limit, we panic a little bit. I want to say everything. Can you condense your business, what you do, in 2 sentences? And I say this because a lot of grants have word counts or character counts. You can't go on and on and on. You got to be very, very specific. So I often do an exercise in a longer session where I get people to actually write out what they, introduce themselves to somebody else within a minute and tell them about their business. And a lot of people find it difficult. And so, that's something you can kind of work on is, can you tell me what you do in 1 minute, or at least, or maybe like 2 sentences. I've even been challenged to tell people in 10 words what I do. So, start thinking about that, because think about how to be concise in those applications. Audit your assets. What I mean by this, again, back to that brand and that clarity. If your website says one thing and your social media is saying another thing, and funders sometimes look at these things. If you have all kinds of different messaging and you're not clear, that's going to confuse someone who's trying to really understand if they're going to award you money. So make sure that your assets all are speaking to each other. Your brand looks the same. You're consistent. Your word choice is consistent across platforms, etc. So that's really, really key, is to make sure that everything is coming together. So the messaging you're putting forward in a grant application is also reflected in all your website, social media, your pitch deck, all those things. It's clear and it's concise. A lot of times when it comes to grants is we're reactive, right? Oh my God, there's a grant, we're going to apply. Yay, right? No. We want to be more proactive. And the way we do that, if you're really interested in getting into this space, is we start a grant calendar. Very simple. You can do it in a spreadsheet. Name of the grant, date it's due, website, what they're funding, who's the funder, very, very simple. The reason we want to build this is what you'll start seeing is grants are kind of, either cyclical. So you might see some government grants that come up, every year, especially like the accessibility grants. They seem to come up every year. Hiring grants like Canada Summer Jobs, all those grants are cyclical. They will come up every year. The Amber grants are every month. They're very, you start building out that calendar. Now, remember, that's all great, but someone has to manage that, right? So whether it's you, whether it's one of your staff, whether it's your, assistant, whoever it is, someone has to manage that calendar for you. But I can tell you that if you start tracking things, you'll start finding opportunities that are more aligned with your business, and you won't be as reactive and try and create things last minute. You'll be more proactive and say, oh yeah, I recall that Canada's summer job grant opens up usually around the end of the year. I'm going to watch for that. So you're ready. It takes a little bit of time to build out a calendar. However, I highly recommend it because in this business, you want to be proactive and not so much reactive because your applications will be stronger and you'll be able to align yourself better with opportunities. So finally, at the end of the day, you really have to be clear with your messaging, with your branding, because it does affect your ability to access funding. So 3 kind of takeaways really is, clarity is your most valuable currency. Make sure that your messaging is clear. Make sure that you find grants that fit you and don't try and fit a grant. So if the grant is speaking to you, you can check the boxes, it's all aligned. That is a grant for you. If you see a grant, you're kind of going, well, I could create this, or I could, that's not for you. Honestly, like you'll spend more time trying to create something that you really won't be able to deliver. And the last thing you want to do is actually give back money as opposed to getting money. Very, very, very important. And action. And what I mean by this is why you? Why do you deserve to get this money? What makes you unique? What benefit are you going to give, let's say for someone you're hiring? What is the benefit they're going to get out of working with you? How is that going to change your business? So position yourself as being the choice. Grants are competitive. The average success rate for a grant, believe it or not, is about 30%. That doesn't mean you won't win. As I said before, rejection is part of the process. But I take rejection, and I'm a professional, and I get rejected. But I take that as a sign saying, not right now, maybe not a good time. Someone else rose to the top. We're going to apply again. And so the more you sort of start applying, the more you're aligning yourself with opportunities, you will see yeses. So again, remember that this sort of grant space, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Grant is a long-term game. With any kind of funding, it's a long-term game. There are all kinds of steps you need to take before you actually start getting a regular cycle of grant funding. So I always tell people, like, don't be afraid of rejection. If you see something that aligns and matches what you want to do, put in an application. You never know. Like I worked with a client recently. We applied for a grant. They never applied for funding before. They were trying to support their wig business, and we got $5,000 to help them buy new wig stands so they could educate youth on the business so they could go out and create their own revenue. So you never know, right? So don't be afraid of the grant space. That's what I do for a living. I'm always happy to connect. I do offer 30-minute consultations to see, if there's potential for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I would love to make your journey a lot more clear and less mystifying. I put a couple of QR codes up there so you can connect with me if you're interested. And I'm a little bit quirky too. I have a Kermit the Frog puppet that sometimes makes appearances on LinkedIn. Got to keep it fun, right? You got to keep it fun. Put the fun in funding.
We thank you for watching. We meet every Tuesday between 8 and 9 a.m. Eastern. There is no cost and an option to become a speaker too. Find East Trade Wins on LinkedIn.